Welcome back to the Foundation in C# course. We're currently in Module 10, and in this lesson, we're going to answer the question, how do I get work experience? All right, so let's talk through the various points here. Let's start with 1, contribute to open source. Open source contributions are visible to everyone. They help others, they contribute to your portfolio of work that you can show off, and you get known in the community. That's a long list of reasons why open source is beneficial. But let's talk a little bit about open source contributions, because often it's that I did. The easiest place to start is documentation. You can look through the documentation and go, oh, I don't understand that. Figure it out, or ask people, get help. We talked about that last lesson. And then once you understand it, then you can create some good documentation about what you learned, and then you can submit that to the open source contributors documentation. That's a way that you can help without it being a big scary thing. Now, you can also start then on doing real work. And I say real work in quotes because really you're doing real work if you're doing documentation. Documentation is huge. Help out that way. But when you start writing C# code, that's when you really get something on your resume that is beneficial. Take on things, but it's the reality. And so you really want to write some sort of C# code. Now, if you're going to be a C# developer, contributing to JavaScript libraries, while it's beneficial and it's helpful, it's not necessarily a resume builder. And the reason why is because you're not writing C# code. You're not showing off what you can do. And so the next step is to write code in areas that you want to work in. So if you want to work in C# web applications, look for a C# web open source project and contribute to it. If you want to work in, back-end C# coding, look for back-end C# contributions you can make. Okay? Now, a lot of repositories will have a tag that says need help, or they'll have a list of issues, and sometimes they'll even mark some as beginner friendly. That's the place to start. Do the beginner friendly things, get help with it. Usually beginner friendly tagged items are ones that the contributor knows you're a beginner. Easier to do it on your own. And so that's the place to start. Get up to speed. Don't try and solve the world's problems on day one. Start very, very small and then move on from there. But with these open source contributions, you can link to them in a portfolio. You can say, here's my 30 pull requests. Here's my GitHub profile. Here's the core framework. That's huge. I mean, an employer will look at that and go, wow, you're actually contributing to what Microsoft is. All right, but you can contribute to other major projects and use those names to help you with your job search. Okay, that's one way of doing this. But another way is if you get invested in one project, especially a small to medium-sized project, you can become a major contributor. You can be a major support to that project. And then guess what? First of all, you now have the ability to say, I'm a major contributor to, and name the project. If they know that there's a job opening at the company they work for, they might suggest you because they know your work. Okay, so you're putting yourself out there and you're showing off what you can do, and that gives you not only references but also people willing to help you bypass the long process of getting a job and might get you a shortcut into a possible job. Okay, so there's a lot of different benefits with open source contributions. So that's the first thing that you can do to get work experience even without a job. The second one is to build a product. And this seems overwhelming at first because there's a lot that goes into building a product. But I purposely worded this in a way that's going to be or building a Windows operating system. We're talking about a very small pain point, especially if it fits. That's cool. That's not going to help you as much as a C# developer. It will still help you because it does show that you are. You can either give it away, and if you give it away, then you're more likely to gain a larger audience. Okay, we've talked through different open source projects we've used before. We use Dapper a lot. Well, Dapper is a tool that now a team at Stack Overflow built it. So then let's say a product like ReSharper, which again, ReSharper is pretty huge, but they have to do a lot more work because it's paid. And there's that hurdle people have of, I'm not going to use anything that's paid, which is it's not a great idea. I mean, use some paid products, support the developers because you want to get supported as well. But I understand at the same time, you can't afford it all the time. You can't afford to buy everything that you want. And so you do have to have some discretion there about what you buy. So if you do go the free route, you're opening yourself up to a much larger audience. And with that larger audience, you can then leverage it to say, I have 10,000 installations of this software. I built this software and 10,000 people are using it. That's a big number. And that's really impressive to a hiring manager. It's something you can put in your portfolio and say, I do this, and you might even areas you want to work for. And if you build a product that helps them, if you go to interview the company and they already use your product, that's a big deal. So create something that is in your area of interest. Gain some income. So maybe your audience won't be as big. Maybe instead of 10,000 installations, you have 100 installations. But if you sold it for $10, now you've got $1,000 that you've made while building your portfolio. That could be significant. Okay, maybe you sell it for $1 and you get 100 installations. Again, it's still $100. It's more than you had when you started. So that still provides for you something you can put in your portfolio, on your resume, and something you can talk through with the hiring manager and say, I have a paid product out there that people use, and over 100 people have purchased this product. All right, so that somewhat closes off the C# that mystery, that unknown of what your code looks like, can sometimes work for you. Your code might be horrible, but if it does the job, then people don't really care. People don't know. And so your gaps with their assumptions. And so if your application is in and running, and maybe it's not what you'd like, and maybe it's not as perfect as you'd like, but it still works, they're going to fill those gaps in with, this is a good application, not this is a good application that has some code issues. So building a product, whether it be free for you to give away or whether it's paid, both of those can really add to your portfolio. But here's the deal. Whichever way you do it, you're still giving someone something to kind of put their hands on. Whether you show them your paid product or whether you give them your open source project, either way, they can put their hands on something that you built. That's a big deal for work experience. Okay? It's essentially a job. It's a previous job that you've had. Hey, I've worked for the past 3 years on building X project. And I've got right now 1,800 in the idea that you got a whole job behind you. It's work experience. It's 3 years of work experience, not just I did something for my portfolio. Or I did something to show work experience. This actually is work experience. Okay? So that's number 2. Number 3, volunteer your services. Find someone application or could benefit from an application. But instead, look for people who are doing good work. I recommend looking for people who are working in the nonprofit organization or a volunteer role of some kind, where it's something small. They're probably doing it very, very cheaply or for free, and they're doing something good. Well, that's something you can get behind. Okay? And so if you look at their process and look and say, okay, you're using an Excel spreadsheet an awful lot. Maybe I could create a small little application that makes that better. All right? So volunteer your services. Volunteer to solve this issue for them. First of all, it gives you a challenge. And if the product works, it gives them something that makes their lives easier. All right? So not only does this gain you experience, because again, you can point to this with an employer and say, I built an application for X organization that does this. But it also gives you a positive recommendation on your resume. Because you've made their life easier. You have done work for them that reduced their work. Well, that would be a happy experience, even if it's not perfect. And here's the thing too, probably the person you're working for doesn't understand application development. If they did, they probably would have built their own application. Instead, what they probably understand, no matter what your code looks like. What mattered was you got the job done better for them. And so they're going to be a glowing recommendation for you. So when your employer or your potential employer asks for references, that'd be a great reference to have. To have someone that says, hey, I had a problem, they solved this problem for me, and it was amazing. Okay? Different places that need help. Okay? So talk to your local nonprofit organizations, talk to just people doing volunteer work, talk to your local homeowners association. I mean, there's so many different places that are little organizations that might need help. Okay? And if you can give them help, then you will get work experience and someone on your resume that says, hey, this person does a great job with software development. Okay, so that's the three different easy-ish, I'm not saying they're easy, but easy-ish ways to get work experience without ever getting a job. Now, obviously, you get a job, you get work experience. But a lot of times jobs will ask for work experience up front. And this is a way to get work experience without having to have an employer. So whether you're working in an open source project or you're volunteering your time or you're building your own project, whatever the case may be, it doesn't need to be paid to count. If you have something you can show, if you have a person that says they built this application for me, or if you have a user base of people that use your application, or if you have open source contributors or open source people that are saying this person helped me, these are all work experience. These will count on your resume. Now, every employer is different. So I do hesitate to give concrete advice here because some employers will look at this and go, that's great. And some will say, no, it has to be in an organization. It is what it is, okay? Every employer is different. However, I will tell you the good employers are as a developer. Because that's what it really comes down to is work experience is that on-the-job training. Because you don't learn everything you need to in school. You don't learn everything you need to online. You need to build stuff. And that's why I encourage you to always be building applications. Because a lot of times people don't do that. And that's why employers ask for work experience. Because work experience, let's say 3 to 5 years, that's 3 to 5 years of building applications. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for the experience of 3 to 5 years of you doing work, actually building applications, not just creating demos. So, if you have experience building applications, most employers will look at that and say, yes, that counts. Okay? So that's your pro tip for today, your homework. Not. You really want to start getting work experience before you want to get hired. Identify one way right now that you can get work experience in the next month. All right? So figure it out, write it down, commit to it, and then move on to our next video.